Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the T.H.O. Movie Reviews podcast, the show where we bring you passionate, honest, and insightful film criticism. I'm your host, Bennett Campbell Ferguson, and I'm here today to, with some of my wonderful colleagues, review the most anticipated film of December, Cats.
Yay!
Meow. Just kidding. Talking about The Rise of Skywalker. I'm way too terrified to even watch a few minutes of Cats.
Coward.
But I am joined today by, first of all, you haven't heard his voice in a while because he lives in California now, but as Luke Skywalker says in The Last Jedi, no one's ever really gone. It's Maxwell Meyers!
Because my parents live here, you can't really ever be gone. Yeah, glad to be here. So glad to be back in this rainy state.
Also here we have the number one member of the Raylo fan club, Shaunette!
Oh, we're gonna get into that. Things happened. Things I'm not proud of.
I'm proud of you.
But hello, everybody.
We have a lot to talk about. It's we'll get to it. It's fun. And also here we have the man who was just recently wondering if the Resistance is a group of libertarian humanists. Did you say?
Yeah.
It's Geoff Wallace.
Woo! I've also been wondering who decided to mate with Emperor Palpatine.
Okay, good.
We're getting into spoiler territory right off the bat.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, spoilers. If you listen to this, you know we do
Just,
spoilers.
preface it in the description. We'll
Yeah.
fix it in post. And also,
There's no fixing
I'm
it.
glad
We
you're
are
thinking
raw.
that too.
We're so raw.
I was like, who got into that strange? I mean, strange.
I'm sure it's somebody's idea of really good porn. It's not mine, you know. But...
There's someone for everyone, I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
All right, we just saw the movie, so it's super fresh. No questions prepared. We're just gonna dive on in. What did you guys think of The Rise of Skywalker?
As on its own, as a movie, I thought it was fine. It's entertaining. I like Star Wars. I like Star Wars movies. I liked this movie as a Star Wars movie. As a conclusion to the trilogy, and also a follow-up to The Last Jedi, I got some issues. I'll be honest. I got some problems with what they decided to do. I should preface this by saying I really liked The Rise of the Last Jedi. That was it. I still really enjoyed it. I watched it again recently. It holds up. So this movie is eliciting some mixed feelings from me.
Jeff?
I guess I echo some of those sentiments. It's fine for a Star Wars movie. Watching it, I felt like it was just a continuation of a long radio serial. Like, sometimes the logic sort of goes out the window, or things are kind
Sometimes it feels like a really long TV episode.
Yeah. But I enjoyed it overall. Yeah.
And Max?
I'm gonna echo Mo, which is I think it was fine. I think like closing out this trilogy, I was like, yeah, it's fine. I think a lot of people were putting a lot of emphasis on it closing out a 9-movie saga, and if we put it in the context of that, I'm like, it feels like kind of just like a fizzle. But it just like within this like little thing, I liked it. It was fine. I liked it better than what was the first one?
The Force Awakens.
The
first one of this trilogy.
Yeah, the first one of this trilogy. So I liked it better than The Force Awakens. I didn't like as much as Last Jedi. Yeah, I would say I also had some problems, but I actually think there were some things that kind of dug about it. Yeah, but yeah, I would say overall, fine. I would also note that I'm not like a giant Star Wars fan, just a casual Star Wars fan who enjoys lots of movies. That's it.
Yeah. Casual?
Casual.
Star Wars? What?
Filthy casuals.
Just kidding. But, you know, I wish for the sake of entertainment value, I could say, like, something really different from what the three of you said. Like, stoke the controversy, but I kind of feel the same way. Like, I was, as I was saying before we watched the movie, I was perhaps unreasonably optimistic because I am a big Star Wars fan, and you know, when it, you know, comes close to the release of a new movie, all the cynicism about modern blockbusters and the fact that, you know, no Star Wars movie since Return of the Jedi has been necessary, you know, like, I kind of tend to, like, overlook that, but, you know, once you actually sit down in a theater and watch one of the movies, you know, that came after the original trilogy, be it the prequels or the the other films in the sequel trilogy, which I tend to be in the middle on. I think both Force Awakens and Last Jedi have wonderful things about them, things that I think are a little sloppy that I wish could have been tweaked, but not special edition style. This movie, I think, I feel I liked a lot of it, and there were moments where I was like, going like, yes, this is good, thank God, that image looks really cool, Kylo Ren looks badass on this weird snowy planet where, it's all like dreamlike and slow-mo, and then there were moments where it's like, oh God, this screenplay is terribly structured, it's episodic and awkward, and they keep like splitting characters up and bringing them back together, and it feels like nothing's at stake, it's just, it was tough at times, and and again, like there are parts that I think are really beautiful. The ending I think is really moving. The very last scene,
totally.
and we'll get into that, I'm sure. But I think it can't escape the Star Wars the Star Wars curse, which is that You had, the original trilogy, which is, really together, like, made one long 3-act film. And then you had, the prequels, which added, unnecessary backstory. And then you have the sequel trilogy, which, I think, like, a lot of, things the sequel trilogy has contributed to Star Wars lore. I'm glad are there. I think Rey and Finn are great characters. I don't think Kylo Ren is a great character, but I think Adam Driver's performance is great. And I'm excited that his performance is a part of the mythos, but this all can't help feeling like a story that was a tacked on thing to a story that was already done. It's like we already saw the Emperor defeated. Now we get to see him defeated again.
Like no way to argue.
He's double dead.
Yeah, but he was dead in Return of the Jedi. He got thrown down a shaft, like, into a chamber that blew up. Like,
no, he's not dead, though. Like,
he was just mostly dead.
Yeah.
I recently saw...
Shout out to the Princess Bride.
I've been recently rewatching my way through American Dad, and I promise this connects. There's an episode where they do, like, a Bond-style parody, and Roger plays the bad guy who falls into a volcano at the end. But then they end up doing a sequel episode where they bring him on to help the good guys. And they're like, I saw him fall into a volcano. And Patrick Stewart's character goes, everyone knows that if you fall into a volcano the right way, you can survive. Even a baby knows that. And then it cuts to a baby wearing a business suit. But he goes, I didn't know that. And so I feel like that's what this Palpatine thing is, which is just like, well, you didn't actually see him die, so therefore he can still be alive. And I'm like, I don't know.
That just brings up to mind like two other examples of this. First, and you can cut this out in post because this is me talking about old stuff I like. There was an episode of Megas XLR, which was a show that ran on Cartoon Network that was like a spoof of mech anime stuff. Mm-hmm. And there's an episode where one of the bad guys who died in the first season comes back in season 2. And they're like, wait, how are you back? We saw you get sucked into a black hole. And he goes, well, it wasn't easy. And that's literally it. That's all the explanation we get.
The state of mass entertainment in a nutshell.
Yeah.
And what was the other one? God, I forgot. Right, from Doctor Who, where Missy comes back after... I forget how she died that time. And she just goes, death is for other people. And it's like, you know what? That is entirely consistent with her character. I'm not going to begrudge that. All right, so you had a point.
Well, it's just it's a really difficult thing. I think Disney wants Star Wars to be more than it is. And I'm not denying that, Star Wars is a vast media empire of, movies and toys and books and comics and, some of those things are really great. I still have my Luke Skywalker and Dagobah action figure, which is very old, so unlike a lot of the newer action figures, it's actually quite well made.
Does he still have a face?
He still has a face, yeah.
That's awesome.
And a tank top.
Ooh.
But but it's like it just, it's very tough, like, because there was, here's the thing that has always bothered me the most about this new trilogy. Like, I think it would have been really cool, like, if you're going to do more Star Wars, if you're really committed to that, you know, like, instead of, you know, rehashing the whole Jedi versus Sith thing, you know, why not, like, come up with some new kind of villain, you know, so you can get into new issues as opposed to just having the same iconography of stormtroopers and red lightsabers. Oh, I know why you do that. Ka-ching! But that's the problem. You know, like any great, you know, modern blockbuster is a film that, you know, takes risks and, you know, goes beyond what we know, whether it's gravity employing, you know, extraordinary technology that we've never seen before, Mad Max, Fury Road, you know, doing a kind of feminist allegory that is certainly not, you know, the only thing like that, but done in a way that was uniquely powerful and uniquely moving and exciting and intense. And I think, you know, like I don't think like any of the films in this new trilogy are perfect, and that includes The Last Jedi, which again, you know, I would say I'm mixed on. I don't hate it, I don't love it. You know, I love some things in it, some things I'm not so sure about, but you know, like, at least like Rian Johnson's whole ethos is trying to take old mythologies and do new things with them, where it seems sometimes that J.J. Abrams, who directed this movie, is just trying to kind of re-experience the process of telling the same stories that his, you know, filmmaking heroes did, and which is why I still think his best film was the first Star Trek, because he didn't give a shit about Star Trek. He's like, I'm going to do what I want, and as a result, it felt fresh and vital and crazy. And this is a, you know, there's a kind of reverence in The Rise of Skywalker that I find a little dull, you know, a little ossified.
I think that actually helps segue really nicely into one of the issues I had some issues, but one of my main, like, if I were to pick one main issue, is I felt like there was a lot of things brought up in the last movie that kind of were undone. Mm-hmm. Like, again, spoiler territory, we find out that Rey isn't a nobody, but she's actually related to Palpatine, which is a huge thing, but compared to, like, no one. Like, no one to the Emperor. Like, that's, like, I was just like, okay.
Well, it's also tired, because yet again, the hero of the trilogy has to deal with the fact that they're descended from evil lineage.
Well,
so
it's
just weary.
I'll work back to that thought, but I was like, okay, there's that, and then it's like, here's Rose, who is apparently in love with Finn, but I guess Finn doesn't love her, and she's also not really going to be in the movie that much. It was like, I feel like there was just like a lot of things like we got to pull a Holdo move at one point is what somebody said, and they're like, that's a 1 in a million shot, and I was like, okay, so I guess apparently that was just them saying, we're not doing that again, and I was just wondering, how much of that do you think was, because the first one came out, and everybody's main complaint was, it's just too much like the original. So then we get Rian Johnson, who's like, I'm going to do all these new things, and everyone's like, not like that. So then they bring back J.J. Abrams as opposed to keeping Rian Johnson on or bringing in someone else, and he basically does kind of rehash a lot of the same stuff. Like, and a lot of those things that Rian Johnson set up, he kind of undoes a little bit, and that kind of miffed me. I was like, those were some of the things that I liked about The Last Jedi. Do you think that was the plan all along? Do you think the plan was to be like, she's nobody, actually she's somebody later? Or do you think this was somebody going, well, the nerds didn't like that, we should probably just give them a rehash because they're at least less angry about that? Well,
this is going to get away from, like, you know, reviewing the film and get into, you know, some of the behind the scenes specifics, which is I know that, you know, one thing that has been said about this trilogy is that there was no plan. Each time it was like a baton handing off, like, you know, there was no secret whiteboard, you know, planning the whole arc out. You know, when Rian Johnson did The Last Jedi, he had total control. When the baton passed back to J.J. Abrams, he had, you know, total control. And one thing I will say for both of them, I think they're both, you know, like offering a vision of Star Wars that is personal to them, you know, with, you know, varying degrees of success. But no, I don't think that was the plan overall, and I feel like, you know, certainly there are things in here that I think, you know, like contradict what happened in The Last Jedi, and that annoys me too, because like for instance, like, I liked the idea that Rey was nobody and that she has to define herself through actions, not where she comes from.
Yeah,
exactly.
And
that was great.
It was great, and so
a great idea.
Which I thought, you know, okay, JJ, if you don't like that, well, you don't have to mention the parent thing again. You can just move forward and tell new stories and not, mention it either way anymore. But instead, he has to go back and create this convoluted thing. And I promise I'm going to let somebody else talk in a sec. But,
All right.
But I really hate the idea of Palpatine having a grandchild, and for the same reason that I hate in Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, Voldemort having a daughter. Some of these really evil figures, I hate the idea of associating them with, parenthood or sex, because I always like the idea that they're so evil that they're beyond all that. That they're truly inhuman. I think it works for Darth Vader to be a father because, he's not an inhuman evil figure.
He was human at a point.
He's a very conflicted character.
But he's more machine now than man.
Well said, Mo. But whereas like Palpatine, even going back to the prequels, you see from the Phantom Menace, he is evil. That's all he is, and the kind of the simplicity of that is what makes him so terrifying. So, the whole Rey Palpatine thing, or Rey Skywalker, as we say at the end. Well, I mean, it just smacks of a lack of imagination, frankly.
I feel like you could, feel like you can still do this story without adding that in. For those, I don't know who would listen to this without having seen the movie first, but part of the story is that Palpatine saw that that Rey was going to exist, and she was going to be super powerful with the Force, and then he was going to manipulate her into becoming the new Overlord of the Sith. And it's like, you can do that without her being his grandkid. You can still keep the story of she's no one from nowhere. Her parents sold her for drinking money. That's
a very good point. Yeah.
You can still do the Chosen One stuff. You don't have to come up with some minutia for why she's so strong with the Force, because it's the Force. It's magic.
It works in mysterious ways.
Forget the midichlorians. It's magic. It does what we say it does. It can...
Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. Quote Yoda.
Yeah.
You gotta love a wonderful world where anything can happen, but when you break the tradition, everybody
rules.
Gets mad. They're like, you can't do that.
You can't have Leia fly in space.
Although, I would argue that there are a lot more issues with all three of the new films than just breaking tradition.
Yeah.
In terms of all of them, I think just story structure and I think the Rise of Skywalker is the worst offender by that count. But Jeff,
I'm just gonna say I'm really tired, so forgive me if I'm not super animated.
That's cool.
We expect it to be a cartoon.
It's a tiring movie, man. There's a lot of movie there.
At some point during all the Palpatine madness, I was like, this is a lot easier to buy if I just pretend that he's Harvey Weinstein.
Say more about that.
That's
was it the robe?
There was just something really sinister about. There's this super powerful white male who can, shoot beams of light, which is kind of like, moving pictures. Mm-hmm. And he has all of these followers who are faceless, who enable his weird, gross behavior. And he wants this beautiful young woman to strike him down, which almost sounds like code, in order for him to release his spirit and send it into her body, and then take over her body and make her his puppet.
Yeah.
That's
like I said.
This goes. That would actually be more interesting if that was just the text of the movie.
See, how about this? I don't think you're right, because I don't think he thought that far ahead. No. But I love that you're hoping that's.
This is what we do as critics. Our job is to find even the meanings that the filmmaker did not foresee, and I think those are just as valid as the ones that are put there very purposely. But that's really interesting. Star Wars is it's so entwined with the film industry. Mm-hmm.
That does fit.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, funnily enough, if you want to see Harvey Weinstein in a film who's not Harvey Weinstein, watch Scream 3. The executive in it, who's been taking advantage of all these actresses all these times, and he produced that movie. And Carrie Fisher's in it, too, playing an actress who didn't get the role of Leia because she didn't sleep with the director.
Hashtag it's all connected.
It's weird. Yeah, I was like, I'm surprised not more people were talking about that movie back then. But I digress.
Let's talk about Carrie Fisher, because for me that was the most awkward part of the movie.
It was
I felt like
awkward,
it could have been
but
a lot worse.
I think so. It was bad enough that it was, I mean, like, I think the thing that's the most awkward is when, she's going to contact Kylo Ren, and you have to have Maz Kanata abruptly say this kind of expository dialogue, like, it's going to take all her energy to reach her son. Well, you don't even really, like, see, like, Leia making the decision to do that. It's again, I think it could have been worse. It could have been a lot worse, and it was great to see her there. Definitely, it felt awkward.
Like they said when they were originally making it, like episode 7 was going to be for Han, episode 8 for Luke, episode 9 for Leia.
Yeah,
and so there's these scenes where like Luke explains his backstory or whatever, and gives Rey Leia's lightsaber. That it feels like, it would be so much better if Leia was here saying that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're so right.
Han coming back and talking to Kylo Ren, like, that would be so much stronger if Leia was doing that.
Yeah.
No offense to Harrison Ford, but like...
It was great. I mean, I like that scene, but you are right. I mean...
Yeah.
I think you can see where she was supposed to be. I was actually thinking while I was watching it I wonder how much more different the script would be if Carrie Fisher had stayed alive. And it
would have been a lot different.
Well, but the fact that they quickly came out and said, we're just going to use what we have. We're not going to CGI her. We promise we won't do that. Made me go, okay.
I'm sure they did like some CGI, but not a lot.
So, which made me think there must have been some kind of script revision, especially given, because I had heard that same thing, that this was supposed to be kind of Leia's movies. So... I was like, okay, I was interested to see how it happened, and I was like, I think they did what they could, which was a lot of face covering.
Yeah, shoot the actor from behind.
Yeah, and I think that was, honestly, I think it was
doubles.
I think it was the smartest move they could have taken, because thankfully it wasn't too much, like, weird, recycled, like, stitched together footage of her.
It sometimes felt like that.
I mean, I think...
Just like the dialogue where... It's like, well, we recorded her saying this one specific thing, so you have to say your thing in an awkward way so she can react the right way.
Yeah, I think it was awkward, but again, I was like, I think it could have been a lot worse. And I was like, I'll take this. Actually, I was like, I'll take this mediocre meal.
I agree. I mean, I think it's a tricky thing because I think like it was awkward, but also I think it was better than the alternatives, which would have been CGI or recasting, and I think I would take this as force as it could sometimes feel over those. But I mean, kind of returning to the issue of Hollywood's continued exploitation of women. I mean, just think if they had made Leia the focus of The Force Awakens or The Last Jedi, they would not have had this problem. But of course, they wanted to do the movies that were centered around the guys first, because that's Hollywood for you. I don't really have any other thoughts on that, but just that's the reality.
Yeah, I think people were trying to hook you in with the person who's least likely to stick around and do it, which was clearly Harrison Ford. And then people are going to go, well, what about Luke? I think people were craving it, so you got it. And then I think
I get
she could
why
have been
they,
like the nice crown jewel on the top, but yeah, you couldn't.
I get why they did it creatively. I just also think it's symbolic of a greater issue.
Yeah.
Too. I mean, that's the problem, really.
Yeah. One thing I did like about it though was I did like, even though Rey was not a nobody, I feel like I like that the overarching message was more about, it's not really about where you came from. Like that message was still there. Like it doesn't matter that she's a Palpatine, she can still be good, just in the same way that Kylo Ren can be a Skywalker and be bad. That the forces don't differentiate bloodlines, they see what's inside you, and it's about the choices you make. That being said, I think it still would have been great if she was a nobody, but I did like that was like, we're not going to make her a nobody, we're going to make her Palpatine to bring this message. It's about what's doing right, not who you should be aligned with because of where you were born or where you came from. And then I also like that at the end, she's like, I don't really want to be associated with who I actually am, but I really do feel like she does feel like a Skywalker because she's walked the footsteps of these people as opposed to a Palpatine. And I think in that way, like in a weird way, she's like, I'm not really a Skywalker, but it is the life that I have led, and therefore I think she feels okay just taking on that name. Because also, who's just like being named Hitler? You're not going to be Hitler after World War II. Even if that is your family name, you're going to scare people. You're going to be Johnson.
Well, and I mean, like one of my favorite moments in all of Star Wars is the moment right after Luke blows up the Death Star in the first film. A New Hope, not the Phantom Menace. And you see Luke and Han and Leia kind of walking off with their arms thrown around each other, smiling, and it's like kind of the idea that Star Wars is about, when you're young and you go off and leave the moisture farm, and you make the family that is going to be the family that you create and love and deal with for the in some cases the majority of your life. And I think one thing I will say, like for the newer films, is they do get to that, and there's a real sweetness between the relationships with the characters, and I did think it was really moving, her saying Rey Skywalker at the end, kind of choose your destiny. You are who you make yourself.
Yeah. I liked that most, like I do take issue that the fact that they kind of ditched Rose Tico for a lot of the movie.
Yeah,
I take issue with that too. Yeah.
But I do like that the story was centered on those three main characters, on Rey and Finn and Poe.
Yeah,
because they don't interact with we get the scene at the end of Last Jedi where Finn and Rey introduce each other for the first time. And it's like, oh, these two are our main characters, but they haven't met yet. So that's kind of weird. Yeah. So we get a whole movie of them playing off each other, and I really appreciated that. I enjoyed that.
And by the way, that scene where they meet at the end of Last Jedi was Colin Trevorrow's idea. He asked Rian Johnson to shoot that to set of his film.
Good for him. I'm still glad he's not directing this one.
That's the Trevorrow legacy for you guys.
I do not think Colin Trevorrow is a good director.
I would still like Rian Johnson to take over.
I want to say I don't know what they're doing with the Star Wars stuff now. Like
they're going to announce the director of the next one in next year, 2020.
Rian Johnson did go on record to say, he was like, honestly, don't trust it until it's up on the website. because that's all I'm going to say about everything. And that was his last word on it.
Yeah. Well, we were all just talking about Knives Out earlier, which is such a great film. Like, honestly, I'd rather see Rian Johnson do, more original screenplays than get entrapped in the crazy world of Star Wars spin-offs, which is so fraught.
I will say though that what I really dug about The Mandalorian is I think it's exactly what they should be doing, which is more like adventures in space that have things that are Star Wars related, and I think that's why I'm okay with Rian Johnson taking over. That's why I liked it. I was like, he just kind of threw it all against the fan. He's like, this is what we're doing. Laura Dern's gonna hyperspace into another ship, and I was like, I love that scene. That was one of my favorites.
No, it's a great scene.
That was dope.
You and Mo are gonna have to have a conversation about the Mandalorian, I think.
Did your battery die?
It shouldn't have.
We're going to leave the light off just to make sure.
Sounds good. Yeah. Wow, y'all who are listening are getting a real peek behind the scenes.
We are recording this in a car.
Isn't it carpool review?
Backseat critique.
Backseat critique.
Yeah. I did not
Except
come up
Mo
with
and
that.
Jeff are in the front seat.
They don't need to the magic. Remember the magic.
Magic of podcasts.
But yeah, so... Yeah. What else did everybody? What was everybody's favorite thing, and what was their least favorite thing?
That's a good question.
I feel like I've
I like that Chewie didn't actually die.
Oh my god! I almost cried.
I had a little heart attack right there.
There were a lot of death fake outs.
So
you could almost. Well, Ben, you said there could be a drinking game.
There could. No. So Chewie. Kylo Ren when he gets thrown off the thing.
Well,
When he also got stabbed.
Oh yeah, when he got stabbed.
I like that they brought. I've been playing Knights of the Old Republic recently, so I like that they brought in some of the like powers that you have there. So it's like Force Heal is a thing, and Force Drain is a thing. So
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Again, the things you can do and can't do in the magic land of Star Wars.
Yeah. The Force basically does whatever we want it to, and that's okay. It's magic. We don't have to explain it.
Space magic. Jeff?
I thought the pacing was a little crazy. Like,
I think that's the worst
just
part of the
comparing
movie.
it to maybe even some of the original films, like the very first one, they're on Tatooine, and then they go to the Death Star, and then... Or Endor, and then the Death Star. Not Endor.
No, it's
whatever the...
Yavin 4.
Yeah, Yavin 4, the Rebel base.
Yeah.
And then Death Star, and they're basically 3 locations, right? And this movie, they're like
There's a
30? I don't
yeah.
know. It's just like, let's go here, let's go there. I don't know that it felt like they were all adequately set up.
It was very clunky.
Yeah.
I think. You know?
Yeah, again. I think-
McClunky. That doesn't count as a pun. That was terrible.
I did like that some of the lightsaber battles were more pared down. So, maybe I brought this up before, but that the climactic scene in The Last Jedi was kind of spoiled for me when someone pointed out that a lot of the stunt work in that scene is really clunky, like actors just waiting to charge in, just like circling around, almost like bad kung fu movies.
The old one-at-a-time fighting style.
Yeah. So by keeping it simple, I don't know. I thought that was maybe a more dramatic touch.
It does feel like there's. I do want to know more. I will say, which I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but it does speak to the power of Star Wars. That it's like we can introduce this concept that was there for like a scene or two, and never comes up again.
Yeah.
But there's enough meat there that you can really. There's enough mythic heft to it that you can really dig into it. So stuff like what Palpatine's kid apparently he was a whole thing, and like this is something I saw in the credits. Rey's mom is played by Jodie Comer from Killing Eve. So get that movie made.
Yeah, I was wondering who.
Don't put it past Disney. They'll really do it.
They
Or they'll make a
should.
Disney Plus series.
Jodie Comer deserves more work. She's amazing.
Is that so? Wait, who was the child of Palpatine? Was it her father or her mother?
The father.
The father.
Okay.
They say that. And also I assume that's like implicit just so that she could potentially have Palpatine as a surname.
Deep cut here. In these original like novels for younger readers that came out after Return of the Jedi, Palpatine actually had a son named Triclops who had an eye in the back of his head.
I'm sorry, was that his given name?
Was he?
I think so. I
Third eyes.
presume.
I will call him Triclops.
Triclops Palpatine.
Not,
This is-
not Steven or Jake or something.
We
Nope.
call him Cloppy for short.
Cloppy.
This is by the logic of Dark Father Darth Vader. I mean,
Yeah.
That's Star Wars for you.
And the other is like the Knights of Ren. Like they're not necessarily built up, but there's some question about them, and I would love to see where they came from. I would love to see, and we get.
Well, this is. Sorry, go ahead.
And there's also like Snoke Steel. Like I did not particularly care when Snoke died. I know a lot of
Nor
people.
did I.
A lot of people were heartbroken because it's like, but he was so set up. He wasn't really. But now it's like, oh, he was a clone, which that's some. Max knows this because he also watched the Jenny Nicholson video.
Somebody thought that up.
Somebody thought that up, and it was a dumb idea. And then they did it, and it's like, oh, it kind of works here.
Well,
Okay.
at least they didn't do it the way that other writer wrote.
Wait, what other writer?
Okay, so like there was a this is completely off track.
Go watch Jenny Nicholson's Rey as a Robot on YouTube, but
Okay.
the quick answer, Mo.
The quick answer is that sci-fi-wire.com asked a bunch of writers, like, if you were going to conclude the sequel trilogy, what would you do? And one of them, I forget what the dude's name is, but he like wrote some of the novelizations of Star Wars, and he has some connection to them.
He had also, I think he'd also touched up some scripts or had a hand in some of the older scripts for the movies. Not much. Like, he never enough to get like his like be the title like screenwriter. But
Yeah.
yeah, so he.
But he was like, I already wrote a treatment for how I would do the third sequel trilogy movie on my website, so just read that. Jenny Nicholson did a video where she read that, and it's bad.
But one of the elements is multiple Snokes. They've perfected cloning, and they just keep coming from the back of a room to attack.
Like, the climax of the movie is, like, there's a bunch of Snokes, and Luke Skywalker, who is also not dead,
Yeah.
who comes back to fight them.
Perfect.
And it's like, and then there's like a scene where we get like Snoke's backstory, and it's stupid and perfunctory and adds nothing to the story.
It was that he was once handsome.
It was
and now
like-
he's not. And I was
He was,
I don't know. He looked pretty great in that
He
gold
was-
robe in Last Jedi.
he was handsome and beefy. And,
beefy.
and then like he fought Obi-Wan Kenobi, and then he was like, I swear vengeance on Obi-Wan Kenobi and all of his students. And it's like, okay, so Obi-Wan Kenobi's dead. His student is dead. His student's student is dead. So I guess we'll do this lady who was his student's student or something. And it's like, none of this has any bearing on anything. It's ridiculous.
It's worth a watch. Go Jenny Nicholson.
I want to. Before we move on, I want to vibe off two of your points, Mo. I think the whole Knights of Ren thing is, it struck me as kind of strange because it's like, where have they been? You know, it's like we know he's Kylo Ren's master of the Knights of Ren, but we didn't see them basically for 2 movies, and then they just appear. Like, why now? Like, that was kind of strange. And the Snoke is a clone thing. I was all right with, because I always thought like gosh, like, you know, all the Sith are dead, you know, at the end of Return of the Jedi. Where does this guy learn the dark side? I like that there was some kind of explanation from whence he rose, although I don't know about the idea of Palpatine cloning him necessarily, but
Like, that's something they could play with more. Like, if it's just explicitly eugenics. Like, we're trying to build the perfect Force user to take over the galaxy. Like, that might be something.
that would be more interesting, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like the part when Hux turns out to be the spy, only for the fact that he just hates Kylo Ren so much that he's like, it's not about what's doing what's right. I just don't want to see him win.
Just fuck that guy.
Yeah, he's like, fuck that dude, which is why he did everything. And I was like, that's like the perfect motivations. Of course that's his opinion. He looks like that weasel that just like, he's like, I don't care who's right or wrong. I just hate this dude. And that was his motivation. I was like, that makes sense. I was actually like, well done, JJ. That was exactly who I would expect that to do.
Well, also, of course he's the spy. You don't know who anyone else is.
Yeah.
No one else in the First Order has a name or a point. We get, what's his name?
Richard D. Grant.
Yeah.
Pride.
And he just shows up to be Diet Grand Moff Tarkin. To be like, okay, I'm the real bad guy because Hux was a whiny little bitch.
Well, one qualm I have with the Hux thing is one part I liked in The Last Jedi is the last time you see Hux, he's looking at Kylo Ren and looking really worried, and I kind of almost would have liked the idea of, you know, Hux, you know, sees like the true horror of like what a galaxy ruled by Kylo Ren would be, and, you know, has like kind of an epiphany of like, oh, I got, you know,
Like, I have to do the right thing.
yeah, it would have been cool if he like he evolved and, you know, like grew. I mean, I definitely feel like the weaseliness is so like on brand with what we saw in the other movies,
been
but
set up
I do kind of
perfectly.
wish that they're then like, I don't know, maybe it's just because Hux and I both have red hair, but, you know.
Ginger's looking out for Gingers.
So do we have to talk about the kiss?
I mean, I feel like we should. I mean, yeah, that was good. I mean, not the kiss, but
So, of
Mo's
course,
reaction.
What we're talking about is the end. Kylo Ren, Rey dies, but Kylo uses the Force to bring her back to life. They kiss. He dies. Crowd goes wild.
No, crowd went quiet. What did you have to say, Mo? What was?
I just said boo.
No, I believe it was boo. It's all the inflection, which everybody laughed at.
I feel so bad about that.
No, because the fact that they laughed It was almost like it's like the quiet version of applause. It's like we laugh because we feel the same way.
I think people liked your reaction better than the kiss itself.
Exactly.
That was how I interpreted
You added
it.
something. You added something extra.
I feel like there's like one person in the audience who was genuinely invested in that, and I ruined that.
Good. There was no setup for it. Like, I mean, I guess there is a little bit. But
two movies of setup.
Yeah.
There's 2 movies of like awkward sexual tension.
Can you put a towel on or something? You know what I mean?
How about this? It was better. I like that because it's basically how I felt. I felt like the whole thing was weird and forced. Weird sexual energy.
Let's
not
call
like
it
fun
what it
weird.
is, fan service. I mean,
It's-
for a certain portion of the fans.
It feels just it shoot in and awkward and obligatory. Like they have no chemistry.
I don't know about that.
They
They have weird chemistry.
They have weird chemistry. Their
They have
characters
creepy, weird chemistry.
who
good chemistry.
very clearly like hate each other, and the only reason they would be pulled together is the Force, which kind of raises like some ethical implications of like is the Force
Eugenics again?
kind of is the Force just kind of like taking away consent in this relationship? Is it trying to really set them up on a date?
Well, it was physically forcing them together. Like with all
Forcing
that
them?
time space.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah. Okay, did anybody else think that was weird that they could like transfer things
I was okay with
through
it.
space and time?
It was weird, but I was okay with it.
I was
Well, I mean, they set it up in The Last Jedi because there's a scene where it's raining and
Oh, yeah.
and then like when they break contact, it's raining where Rey is, and then when they break contact, Kylo has a bit of rain on his glove. So I liked at least that was like vibing off, something that was set up.
it was set up.
I mean, it may have been taking it a bit far because that one simple raindrop was, a lot more like chilling than like lightsabers like teleporting basically. but it was, I suppose, you could argue, I don't know if I will, but you could argue that it was an outgrowth of what was done before.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I was like thrown off the first time. I forgot about the raindrop. Knew I should have done my homework before this. But the part where like
With
he
the
like
necklace?
snatches the necklace off her, and the first thought was, can we do that?
Is that a thing? Okay.
Is that a thing that happens? And then I was like, the Force. You know how quick I was like, I guess that's the Force for you. Don't know what you can do
Yes.
until you do it.
So I want to get into an issue that I think this is an issue that applies to I think a lot of big budget films in general. It's kind of interesting. We are seeing more sci-fi action fantasy movies that will have a leading female character, but we see very few female villains. And what I think is really interesting is that in like kind of like male hero stories, it's always a man versus a man, and what you get to see is really two different versions of masculinity clashing. I think probably the one of the strongest examples being like the Spider-Man, the idea of hard-working, kind of working class, Peter Parker, versus Norman Osborn, the guy who basically he's peeved because he has everything but he wants more, but we rarely get to see two like women clash in these kinds of movies and see like two different versions of femininity juxtaposed. I mean, does anyone feel like like it's a little bit of a missed opportunity to have a male villain in this series and then it becomes a kind of weird twisted will they won't they thing?
I think people are going to start changing. Right before this movie, we saw a trailer for Mulan, which really don't know how I feel about that. I feel like I felt the same way about all of the Disney movies, and not all of them have been good.
We could do a whole podcast, by the way, about some of the behind-the-scenes stuff about Mulan.
Let's not and say we didn't.
But
You're here.
what I do like from the trailer is I love that they inject that there is kind of another female evil character playing alongside the other guy, and it's also she's the witch as well. I'm like, okay, that's fine, but at the same time I was like, yeah, there should be more feminine, more lady characters in here. Why not a witch? That's fine. Next year we also have Wonder Woman 1984 with Gal Gadot.
I just want to inject this really quick. Next year we have 4 tentpole movies coming out that are directed by and starring women.
That's right.
And that's kind of awesome.
That is awesome. But I think we're also going to get... but yeah, I think we're... Gal Gadot is going to go up against Kristen Wiig in Wonder Woman as Cheetah. Cheetah.
That's a matchup I'm looking forward to.
And I think, and just from the little bit I've seen of Kristen Wiig, seeing like who her character kind of is going to start out and what she's going to become, I think that later will be kind of cool. I think we are going to start. I think we're going to start seeing it. I think it's little steps, and it's frustrating when you want to see like all the big change come. Great, but one of the things I will say I loved about this movie was that I got more Rey. I feel like I finally got to understand her. I feel like I knew exactly what she was doing. And in the last one, I know she was just learning, but I remember thinking, I was like, wow, I feel like we had a great female character. And then she was not around much and just kind of struggled the whole movie. But
kind
that
of
was
a cipher, too.
Huh?
She was kind of a cipher, too.
Yeah.
Like, not... I don't know. This movie definitely injected more personality into her than the other ones.
I think, and now knowing that, like each movie was just kind of like approached as is, I was happy that JJ did that. But then again, we also had to sacrifice time with Rose Tico, which is, again, one of the points that I was like, frustrated about earlier.
Well, I mean, a couple points I want to make. For one, like, the whole idea of the love plot with the villain. I mean, they would most likely never do that with a male hero. I mean, in one of these movies.
Oh no, they would definitely do that with a male hero in one of these movies. That's
you think so? They never did that before.
I think
not in a Star Wars movie, but they definitely like that. That's Catwoman. That's that entire vibe that's been around for.
No. I mean, with like a male hero, like they would never have like a male hero I guess I am. Well, I mean, you're right. I mean, with comic books and stuff, but Star Wars, they would never have done that with Luke because in these kinds of stories they don't they view the male because the movies are made by men. They don't view the men solely in terms of who they have the hots for, and that's, and this gets into a greater issue I have, which is I feel like, George Lucas, with the original trilogy, he was a guy, his dad wanted him to, go into his office supplies business in Modesto, California. George Lucas wanted to, race cars and make movies, not unlike Luke wanting to get off the moisture farm. So it was coming from something George Lucas understood. Where is this? Look, I'm not someone who believes that filmmakers can only make movies about people who have things they have personal experience with. But I also think that, some filmmakers have a harder time with that than others. And honestly, what does J.J. Abrams or Rian Johnson know about being a teenage girl? J.J. Abrams made Felicity, but that was the soapiest, most glossy and unrealistic vision of young womanhood possible, and I think these movies would have been better if women had directed them. Honestly, I'm not gonna discount that. There's definitely a certain insight to having a different voice behind the camera, but I will say that empathy goes a long way in terms of telling stories like this. I think I'm just more open to stuff like that. I would definitely want to see a Star Wars story starring and directed by a woman. That would be awesome. That would be something different and new, and it would piss off a lot of people, which I am okay with, because if that's something that pisses you off, then I do not want to be associated with you. But one of my favorite examples of this is Barry Jenkins directing Moonlight. Barry Jenkins isn't gay, but because he was able to empathize with these characters, because he was able to put a lot of thought and effort into understanding them, he makes this beautiful story. Yes.
And I feel like there's a lot to say about that to artists who can kind of step outside their comfort zone, step outside what they know, and empathize with people and be willing to listen. There's the old expression is write what you know. I agree and disagree with that. The disagree part is challenge yourself. Go, if you're going to write something you don't know and learn about it. Go experience new things. Go study new stories. And that's where something truly different and interesting comes out. Is when you stretch yourself like that.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think the challenging thing is that, like, I think, you know, Barry Jenkins worked so much harder to, you know, understand the lead character in Moonlight than J.J. Abrams ever tried to understand Rey.
That's fair.
And I think everything you just said is so true and really, really beautiful. And, you know, I think the only impediment to that is really honestly, you know, talent and work ethic. You know, I think, you know, if Abrams like worked harder as a writer, of course, you know, he could never make a movie like Moonlight. You know, that's a masterpiece. You know, but
people could.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting thing, and I absolutely agree. I mean, you know, part of art is to expand empathy. I mean, why make art if you can't do that? I absolutely agree with that.
I don't know if that answered any question we had earlier, but it's I don't know. I mean, another recent example. We were talking about Knives Out.
Yeah.
Rian Johnson directing and writing that. Ana de Armas' character, Marta, she's basically the main character of that story.
Yeah, much more than Daniel Craig, contrary to the marketing.
And Rian Johnson is not a Latino immigrant. He is not, as far as I know, I don't know if he's related to anyone who is undocumented and has had to live with like that fear and that's worry. But he's able to craft a really great story around it anyway because he has that empathy. And
we should point out, I think, that, you know, Monica Castillo, who's a Latinx writer, she did like feel that, you know, like his portrayal of that character was wanting, you know, in a lot of ways, and the points that she made, I don't think are wrong, but I also think that Rian Johnson, I mean, in terms of going back to the idea of, you know, how well you do at this is how hard you work at it. I do think, you know, Rian Johnson did work hard, and Knives Out is a movie with a level of sophistication and insight and provocativeness that, you know, I mean, to say the least, you know, a film like The Rise of Skywalker just doesn't have. I mean,
yeah. I feel like we are dominating the conversation. Does anyone else want to say something?
I don't think men know how to write female characters because their only experience with them is in the form of love. So when you go to write a character, you write what you know, which is a woman in love, because that's the only experience I think some of these men have.
Sure.
As opposed to maybe men who have a lot of female friends, like who they could talk to. Just like, again, it's like, but also, I don't know. I was like, I feel like, yeah, maybe it shouldn't have been, maybe it shouldn't have been there. I mean, it was definitely weird. They don't kiss until after Ren has his redemption. Bendemption, both good. And so,
by the way, that's the story of my life.
Bendemption. It just sounds like a weird Western directed by Clint Eastwood. But I think that is the thing is, you know, it is empathy. Maybe, and it is empathy. So maybe it's just writers going, well, you know, ladies, they also get motivated by feelings and such, just like men do it. I would say J.J. Abrams doesn't go, you know, like, it's not like he made it like about lady feelings. He's not like, you know, she wandered in and was like, I'd love to help with the rebellion. Unfortunately, my period. Like, so, I mean,
imagine if someone even mentioned periods in Star Wars.
Space periods.
That would break the internet.
There's no underwear in space,
Yeah.
so that just raises a whole other question.
You know, but
all those raps.
but yeah, I think it is empathy, but I think it's also handing the torch over to other people. I think right now Disney's playing things very safely.
Oh, absolutely. They spend billions of dollars on this. They have no choice.
I mean, their entire business strategy is predicated on safety.
Well, they bought this and they were like, okay, cool, money-making machine. We're finally going to do this thing that everybody refused to do wherever it was before. It was Fox, right?
Yeah,
probably.
Fox.
Yeah.
Well, Fox distributed the original movies.
So-
Lucas made them.
and so-
Lucasfilm produced them. Yeah.
But I think they did the first one, and it made $1 bajillion.
The Force Awakens.
Yeah, and then they did Rogue One, right?
They
Then
did.
Rogue One. Yeah.
Rogue One was riding off of the high of the last one, made $1 bajillion. Not as much, but a little less than $1 bajillion. And
It was
then
over 500 million.
And then Last
domestically,
Jedi did a bunch of money, but also did a bunch of anger amongst the fans. They were very upset. And then Solo came out, and then that flopped pretty hard. And I think they realized that Star Wars is not something you could just slap together and call it good and shove a bunch of money into it, which is why I think, I was telling Mo before this movie, The Mandalorian's been really nice, because I think they spent like $100 million on it or something. And it's really just a samurai story meets a Western meets Star Wars, which is everything that Star Wars once was before, just executed in this way. And I was like, I feel like they took a very good, balanced hand at it, and they're like, we have one chance to get the first live-action Star Wars TV show done right. We've done it. And I think they then were like, okay, we have to get this movie right, because we said there was only going to be 3. And so I think they were like, good enough. And now I think, and that was their thing, is they're like, okay, we've now reintroduced it. We got all the young kids hooked to the Star Wars. And I think now the next goal is to really, let's start doing Star Wars space stories, just things that take place in the universe that aren't necessarily that. And I think as long as they can recognize that the best thing you can do is hand it off to new people or people with vision and empathy, and someone who maybe hasn't done a Star Wars movie before, maybe just has a really good idea put through the lens of Star Wars, I think will allow that. And I hope there is more women in the future that get their hands on this, even if it's just at the script writing level. So maybe there will be less love, or less love scenes, or maybe more love scenes, or accurate love scenes that are less clunky and weird.
We should mention that Deborah Chow is directing the Obi-Wan series.
Yeah.
So
I think
certainly.
that's great. So I think we're on the right track. I think it's just slow going. I think the thing about all Hollywood is that they're afraid to do something different, like trust women to do something, because then when it doesn't go, it must have been the woman's fault, we put it in the hands of a woman, when really that's not the case. And I think I think there's just a lot of trust, especially with something like Star Wars. It's not just like taking any old movie and handing it to a woman, it's taking Star Wars. And I think some people put a weird amount of pressure on that, and I'm hoping that now that this is complete, some of that pressure can be let go of, and it's not about, like, who's telling this story. It's just who's going to tell a good story. Because a good story will make $1 bajillion, which is what happened the first time. So that's the way you make money off of Star Wars. And hopefully in the future we will get to see some varying voices throughout the whole series.
I hope so
Totally.
too.
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys. I feel the discussion maybe building to a natural climax here. Does anyone have any final issues they want to dive into before we turn off the old mic?
I don't have any big statements to make, but I'm kind of wondering about those horses they put on that Star Destroyer. Like,
That was dope.
did they bring them all back in?
Yep.
Did they just let
Maybe.
the Star Destroyer sink?
I think they were, I think the ones that didn't get blasted, I think
Sure.
he was like, get everyone on there. And she was like, but what about you? And he's like, go without me. I think they were supposed to be the only 2 left on the ship.
Okay.
But I mean, it would have been tragically hilarious to just see like
All
a
these
space horse
bodies
fall, like
just
sliding
falling.
off the ship.
Some of the logistics of the final battle were shall we say, shaky.
I mean,
Yeah.
putting just the horses on top of a spaceship, I think, is shaky as at best.
To say nothing about one being able to shoot a shit ton of lightning up into the sky and take out pretty much, I don't know, every ship
it was
in the
like
universe.
it was like
Oh, I don't know about you guys. I tried that last night. It worked fine for
He
me.
had unlimited power.
what,
true.
I mean,
Unlimited
actually, funnily enough, right before he shot all the lightning into the sky, I was like, wow, it's like he lives on a lightning planet. Well, this was good news. I'm glad this
Yeah.
worked out for the Sith Lord, that he could find the hidden Sith planet, which is just full of lightning, which I'm sure helps him. And then he shot everybody out of the sky, creating, what is it? The thing, an electric electromagnetic an EMP into the sky, which just brought everybody down. I was like, well, that was a cool shot when they all just started falling out of the sky and there's just lightning everywhere. Cool shot, but also
Yeah, it was a cool shot.
Yeah, I was like, wow, okay.
I see. It's funny. I like in terms of spaceship battles. I still, in a way, feel like the only one in all of Star Wars that really works is the one at the end of the original movie with the trench run, because that you have ships flying through a confined space. Like when it's just ships everywhere, it's so hard to maintain any sense of spatial coherence.
Yeah.
Just the same problem as Return of the Jedi.
Yeah,
It's even the same writing. Let's juxtapose the individual struggle against the super powerful being with the giant space battle that's also happening. Kind of attentional whiplash.
Yeah. And Return of the Jedi, I think, does that a lot better. But even there, it's challenging when you're dealing with a whole Ewok army.
Ewok.
By the way, Ewoks, anybody?
They were there.
They were back. Wow.
Nice nod.
We got Ewoks and Porgs in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
And it was Warwick Davis playing Wicket.
Oh, was it?
That was Warwick Davis. That's so cool.
Right on.
I love that.
Good for him.
I liked what was his name? Something Frick? Baba Frick?
The little
Yeah.
tiny...
Yeah, the
hacker
guy that reset his C-3PO. He was my favorite character. I just like that C-3PO comes out and he just, from his stage goes, "Hello, I'm C-3PO." And he's like, "I am Baba Frick." And it's just he just does what's natural. Someone says hello, you introduce yourself.
I like how tiny he was. He was
just
absurdly
tiny and old and just I don't know, everything about him being a tiny puppet. I was in love with Baba Frick, and then I loved that he was friends with Kerry Russell.
I liked Dio.
Dio was great. Yeah,
Dio was cute.
Happy.
I almost wish they'd done more with Dio.
Did you guys notice that he was voiced by J.J. Abrams?
Yes, it did.
You're kidding? That's so funny.
They say that in the credits.
I was like, I love that. I was like, perfect. He just has to say what he's feeling, which I feel is just what J.J. Abrams does. I am happy.
Also, I like to imagine he's named after Ronnie James Dio.
Oh, yeah.
So that's pretty metal.
I hope so.
I think that's everything.
I think that's a great note. You should always
gonna-
leave on, I think it's Rodney James Dio.
I'm gonna say one more thing before we wrap up. I mean, it's tricky, and I don't want to crap on the newer Star Wars films overly because I mean, as a Star Wars fan, I mean, I think part of the journey of building a healthy fan community is saying, first of all, there's certain fans with horrible, hateful, misogynistic, racist beliefs, and as far as I'm concerned, they have no place in the conversation, and their views are not valid, and they should shut up, frankly. But putting that aside, I feel like it's like part of having a good fan community is being comfortable with the fact that we can have reasonable disagreements about the lore and respect each other's perspectives. And so I don't want to crap on the newer movies too much, but at the same time, watching this one, it's kind of funny, for all my cynicism about, post Return of the Jedi, Star Wars, and, Hollywood blockbusters in general, it's I honestly got myself really excited for this movie. And it's so strange to, after all that excitement, sit down, in a theater and watch it and find that, it has structural problems that honestly a lot of first-year screenwriting students would know not to do. And this did remind me that we do have to a certain extent I mean, when the original Star Wars came out, that it was something new. It was taking old mythologies, but it was remixing them in a new way, and giving people something they hadn't seen before, and it's a reminder, to look forward to in this moment, not only the new Star Wars is, but what the equivalent of a new Star Wars is now, the movies that aren't just, going back to the well and reconstituting these old things, but that are, really, really embarking on truly new territory, whether we're talking about, the sci-fi, genre, like, looking at like, Gravity or Arrival or something like that. But I mean, to bring up Moonlight, I would argue in some ways, the release of Moonlight was in an event that, like, while not like didn't have the commercial magnitude of a Star Wars movie, had an impact that in many ways was just as important, and like kind of recognizing what milestones there are now, and that there is, more to movies than, just, going back to the factory line and, let's make another. It's like, no, let's not make another. Let's, capture the spirit of innovation that makes the classics great in the first place, and do that to, like, forge new territory. I mean, I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. And if they can do that in future Star Wars movies, that's awesome. But, Star Wars already has a place in history, and, history, I think, is going to be written by, whatever the next Star Wars is.
Not
Right on.
specifically the next chapter of Star Wars.
Precisely.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure you weren't setting up the next trilogy.
Oh, didn't I tell you? I'm directing it.
I knew it!
Exclusive.
All right. You guys ready to call it quits?
Yes,
think so.
very much
All
so.
right. Well, if you like this podcast, please click thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at T.H.O Movie Reviews. I'm your host, Bennett Campbell Ferguson, here with Maxwell Meyers, Mo Shaunette,
Hello.
Geoff Wallace.
Hey.
So glad to have you guys all here to do our final review of the decade. Wow.
Of the decade.
Wow.
Yeah.
We will be back.
Lord.
We're always back. And from all of us here at T.H.O Movie Reviews, may the Force be with you.
That's not good.
Chewbacca sound.
Well played.
Surprised you didn't go with boo. Love it.